Back when AMD launched their 6000 series of graphics cards, they introduced us to a new feature, the Resizable memory bus, which allowed higher frame rates by allowing the CPU to have full access to the GPU's frame buffer. But a few months ago, the only way that you could have access to this resizable memory bar in gaming was if you had an AMD CPU and an AMD GPU. But last week, Nvidia changed all that by finally giving us driver support, and Intel made it a feature on their motherboard chipset and CPUs. So just how good is Intel and Nvidia at the resizable memory bus game? So I'm going to go ahead and try to run this test as A/B as possible. I've got an Nvidia RTX 3070 here and a Intel 10850K. I have the memory loaded up with about a 4200 megahertz XMP, and I'm rocking the Gigabyte Z490 Aorus Master motherboard. I'm going to go ahead and start it up, run some benchmarks, and then I'm going to update the drivers and then maybe some BIOS updates to make the feature become available. Hopefully, if there's any things I have to do to this, I can show you guys what I have to do to get it to work, and then you might have a better idea of how to get yours to work. So I'm going to go ahead and run some benchmarks here and see where we sit, and then get the resizable bar working and see how much better it is. This is a really nice setup because if I was going to build a PC right now, I would be building something with parts like this. Like 10850K, you got 10 cores. They're not the best bin cores, but you got 10 of them. And they easily outperform the 11th gen. And then you have a slightly scaled down 3080 in a 3070. So you're cutting a lot of price off without a huge performance drop if these parts were actually available. Obviously, the 10850K is available. It's super cheap. It's a really good buy. But graphics cards, unfortunately, we're not seeing any of. Now it's trying to update everything and make the resizable bar work. So let's go ahead and look into that. All right, so first things first, you're going to want to go ahead and update your game ready driver. This is going to take forever because Nvidia servers are crap, I guess. I say it takes forever. It takes like 2 minutes to download half a gigabyte, which in all honesty isn't the worst it could be. I only update the Nvidia graphics drivers. I really hate GeForce Experience. It just bothers me. The screen's going to flash a few times. Just let it happen. All right, go ahead and finish that up. So after you're done updating your Nvidia drivers, go to your motherboards page and get yourself the latest BIOS. Now, make sure that your CPU will still be supported after you update the BIOS. Usually with Intel, they only go like 1 year before they come out with a new motherboard, so you wouldn't have that problem anyway. But make sure your CPU is still supported after a BIOS update. You don't want to accidentally update your BIOS and then your CPU drops support and then you've bricked your computer for the foreseeable future. Then once you download it, go ahead and extract all, and then take that extracted folder and put it on a thumb drive. Then boot yourself into the BIOS by restarting your computer and just spamming the delete key. Once you're in the BIOS, you're going to have to flash your BIOS, which is updating your motherboard's firmware pretty much. Obviously, all motherboards are slightly different. Usually, within a brand, all of the flash procedures are the same, but you'll want to check how to update your specific BIOS if you have a different motherboard than I do. I'm using a Gigabyte Aorus Z490 Ultra, so just press F8. It'll bring up this page, enter, switch this over to your thumb drive, and then go to that file that you copied onto your thumb drive. And then it'll ask you, are you sure? Hit yes. Now make sure you don't lose power. If you were doing this with your, like in a thunderstorm, don't lose power, you'll brick your motherboard. I have this on a UPS, an uninterruptible power supply. So if my power was to go out right now, it would not brick this board. And in about 10 minutes, your BIOS should be up to date and you will have the feature that allows for the resizable bar. So when the BIOS is done flashing, it's going to reset the BIOS to stock configuration. So you're going to have to re-input any overclocks or XMP profiles that you have set. Go ahead and go to advanced mode. Now, I don't actually know where this is going to end up being. I just know it's going to end up being somewhere. Oh, okay, so I guess you just have to turn on 4G decoding. All right, and then you have to go to the settings tab, and then I/O ports, and above 4G decoding, just enable that, and it'll pull up the resizable bar support. Click auto, and then save and exit. All right, so now we have the driver support, and we also have the motherboard BIOS support. Now we have to find out if we need to update the graphics card BIOS. A lot of fun, isn't it? All right, so once you're back in Windows, you're gonna have to go back into your Nvidia control panel. Make sure that you're at version 465 or higher, which you updated it, hopefully. Now you have to go over to the system information. Still saying resizable bar, no. So now we have to update the video card BIOS. So this is where things kind of vary depending on which graphics cards you have. So I have an MSI card, so I'm going to go ahead and go to MSI's website and download their BIOS flashing tool. So because I'm using an MSI card, I'm going to go ahead and download MSI Dragon Center and have that install the new VBIOS. Now, there's an entire process to reflashing a video card's VBIOS if you don't have access to something like Dragon Center. It's just an entire process. It's not super hard or difficult to do. It's just currently I don't know if there is a VBIOS available for this card to bring it to resizable bar status. So I'd rather use the tools that are supported from the manufacturer. I really don't like Dragon Center. I don't trust it. I've had it set an i9 speed down to like 700 megahertz while gaming before, and you can imagine like what 3 FPS looks like in Call of Duty. I'll probably use it to update the VBIOS and then just completely uninstall it. So go ahead and run Dragon Center as administrator. Yeah. Sign your life away. MSI, you sure do have a lot of crap to install when I just want to do one thing. Screw off. All right, where are your tools at? Go to live update. Oh, what? Hit advanced. So there's our VGA BIOS. Let's go ahead and check that and install. Go ahead and hit Y to confirm. It'll update the VBIOS. Super fast, super easy. And now it's going to automatically restart. And then we should have our resizable bar now. I'm really happy, actually, that it went ahead and went through that process, because if it just worked with the motherboard and driver installation, then you wouldn't get the full effect of how this can be a little difficult. It's not the end of the world. You should definitely try it if you are somebody who has this kind of hardware, because a 10% uplift in performance is massive if you're spending, like, say, if you only got your card for like $500. All right, so now when we go to the NVIDIA control panel, we go to system information, it should say resizable bar yes. That means the resizable bar is working. So now all we have to do, load up a benchmark, see if it's doing any better. So hopefully I don't get this video too convoluted. I filmed it kind of as like a test, and then I ended up doing some benchmarks and finding some interesting results, so I had to kind of play with how I filmed it. So I went ahead and ran a few benchmarks, and on NVIDIA's website, they show the 3080 resizable bar performance improvements with a 5950X, which we have one of those. We're going to do some videos with it. Get subscribed. But on this graph, it shows Cyberpunk pretty much standing out at 6%, 5.9%, 6%, we're going to round there. And then it shows all of these games as compatible with the resizable bar. So Hitman 2 and Metro Exodus are the other two games that I'm going to go ahead and benchmark for this. So at 1080p, I saw pretty much no changes between the games. In fact, in Hitman 2, we lost performance. But then at 1440p, I once again didn't see any improvements in Metro Exodus or Hitman 2. But in Cyberpunk, I did see about a 6% improvement in performance. So Cyberpunk does see an improvement from the resizable bar with NVIDIA GPUs. Obviously, NVIDIA used it in their own slide. And then at 4K, I once again didn't see really any change in Metro Exodus or Hitman 2. I'm not sure if I have them configured wrong or what, but they just didn't seem to change at all. In fact, Hitman 2 actually loses performance in at 1440, but then at 4K it seems to even out, which probably is showing that we're running into just a limitation of the GPU. But then Cyberpunk once again saw a tiny increase in frames. So As far as I can tell, the resizable bar does work on Nvidia graphics cards. It's just, I feel like it's going to be some time before we see full implementation in the other titles that I worked with today. But obviously I got it working on one of them titles, so it shows promise. So if you like this, guys, if you learned something, if you need to know more, leave a comment, get subscribed, like this video, interact. It helps us get views, it helps us get watch hours, it helps us get monetized so that we can continue to create great content for you guys. So thanks for watching.